Good evening. This is Debra V. Wilson. It is Tuesday, and I am in Bradford, and the date is the 10th of March 2020. The time is 1800 hours and 43 minutes, and that's BST time zone. So this is going to be a quick podcast, and it centers on a question I have about de-radicalisation, and the context is the United Kingdom. So the impetus for this is a post I saw from one of the many people I follow on Twitter, and it is, so I'll just read it to you, and I will provide the link in the description box of the YouTube podcast. So it deals with de-radicalisation, and I'm going to just start reading it. It's from the 28th of January 2020, this year. 3 years before Yusuf Khan stabbed two young people to death on London Bridge, Ian Aitchison warned that the way the justice system treated violent extremists was a shambles. He wrote a report for the then Justice Secretary Michael Gove, which delivered 69 urgent recommendations to the Ministry of Justice. Only 8 were accepted. In this documentary, the former senior Home Office official and prison governor asked whether more could have been done to prevent Yusuf Khan from carrying out his murderous rampage. He explores every stage of Yusuf Khan's journey through the British criminal justice system, wondering what might have changed his trajectory. Her Majesty's Prison and Probation Service is something of a closed book, but drawing on the testimony of whistleblowers, Ian Aitchison digs into the causes behind the situation he first identified as a crisis in 2015. He meets former prisoners and extremists, criminal justice experts, parole officers, and a former prison minister, most of whom are damning about a system that has been woefully neglected, quote unquote. He asks if the quality of de-radicalisation programs can be improved, whether it is right to separate the most dangerous terrorists from the prison population, and if it is possible in a liberal democracy to lock up dangerous terrorists and throw away the key. The documentary will test some of Ian Aitchison's more radical ideals and ask whether we can ever eliminate the possibility that an atrocity such as that carried out by Yusuf Khan will happen again. Presenter is Ian Aitchison, producer Rachel Wright. And it's a novel production for BBC Radio. Again, I'm going to include the links so you can read it for yourself. Okay, so the question I have is, in this podcast, BBC podcast, is a discussion about the modality of de-radicalisation, and so they bring up the part of the model that includes imams, and that's the part of the model I actually have a problem with. So, from a theoretical perspective, because I'm not a practitioner, but I do have questions that help to form some of my thinking about and the contextualization of my research. And the question that I have is the de-radicalization of extremists who weaponize Islam is through the prism of the construct of a religion. And to challenge that construct and then present the extremist with the quote-unquote true form of Islam. So the problem I have with that is twofold. One, I still question which is first, chicken or the egg. So is it the religion that needs to be challenged, or is it the person's worldview that has chosen to militarize their religious identity? And so, in going along in that same stream, then I asked the question, isn't the more prudent question why a person has chosen, in this case, people who militarize? Extremists in this country overwhelmingly are in two branches. People who militarize Islam, and then the other stream would be the far right. And I would argue those people militarize their white English identity. So isn't it the more prudent path to go down? Why people have a multitude of identities? Why they've picked that particular identity, in this case, Islam, to militarize as an expression of their rage. So as opposed to saying to these people, there's a truer path to Islam. There are multiple problems with that, because I think when you take the religious path with the imams, you've sort of stepped into their space by saying, okay, so now we're going to fix you by telling you there's a correct way to view Islam, when in fact, as the article says itself, this is a liberal democracy, which affords us the space to construct a myriad of things any way we choose. For example, I embrace both Islam and Catholicism, and I am currently in a journey of conversion to Judaism, because for me, at this point in my life and going forward, it's a truer path for me. And the British government, as long as I don't want to follow the law, has nothing to say about that. They have nothing to say to me. They don't have a right to say, well, there's a truer path to being a person of the book. It's really none of the state's business, as long as I don't run afoul of the law. So that is I think probably the more paramount issue I have with this. When you form this equation by starting with, oh, let's get them to a truer path of religion. Isn't it the better question, at least I theoretically believe, again, because I'm not a practitioner, why a particular group of people in a particular space, in this case would be the United Kingdom, have decided to militarize a particular identity. And again, in this case, it would be their religiosity, Islam. And then the second question I have about it, is this a consistent way of dealing with extremists? So when dealing with the far right, who are overwhelmingly white in this country, do you tell them the right way to be good white English people? So so that's a theoretical question. I mean, I'm sure I could find it with research. So I would be curious about it. Do you bring in white people to just de-radicalize them? And then do you find good white people to tell them this is a good way to be a white English person? So these are just theoretical questions. So again, I am going to post a couple of things in the description box, because I'm forever and always thinking and looking at the way the state currently does national security modeling here, and there's a myriad of pieces and it's all under one umbrella that I call the model, but there are a myriad of pieces that make up that model. And the thing about it is you can't actually, well, at least I can't, I don't have the ability to sit down and question the counterterrorism police, SO15, or the security service, MI5, about what they think about approaches, what they think is the best approach, and what they think is the paramount issue to focus on in terms of de-radicalization. There is more transparency with the I shouldn't say transparency, that's the wrong word. There is more information available, more in quotes, from SO15 about their practices and what they deem to be best practices. And the head of the counterterrorism police, Mr. Neil Basu, has always voiced his support for the PREVENT program, which it deals with de-radicalisation. But I still have those questions. So, another stream of consciousness. In any case, this is Debra V. Wilson, and I will post the links to the BBC podcast, and then I also have an older chicken or egg podcast that I think I'm going to call this one an addendum, or part 2, chicken or the egg, part 2. So in any case, this is Debra V. Wilson. I'm in Bradford. It's been raining constantly. And there you go. Do have a good evening.